Hi, this is Brian O'Neill from Vanguard Prepared, and I'm going to be your host to finish off in the Maritime Command and Control checklist for land based first responders. Um, we're on section 3 now, and again, if you'd like the whole checklist itself, you can get it here. Maritime Emergency Complete Guide for Land Based First Responders. Uh, we're going to talk about sections 3 and 4 today, maintaining the hull integrity with high volume water systems. Inside the vessel, they have a dewatering pump system, and we were on one of the vessel familiarization tours, and we asked the captain who had his engineer with him, how much water they can de-water or how much they can offload as the fire departments are pumping water onto it. So they were asking the fire service, this is the vessel master, how many gallons per minute can you pump on? And they were in the area of about 16,000 gallons a minute with the fireboats and some of the Neptune firefighter systems that we have and of course the fire trucks themselves and aerial ladders. And so he turns to his engineer and he says, how much can we de-water? And he's got a calculator and he's trying to figure it out. And he says, we can do about 16,000 gallons an hour. So the amount of, or the volume of water that you're putting on the boat is approximately 60 times the amount that they can get off the boat. So we need to talk to the crew members when you are going to be helping them with fire suppression systems. How much water are you putting on? Where are you putting it on? And then they can either use their ballast systems to stabilize the vessel or dewater the water. But that doesn't change the free surface effect very much if you're pumping 60 times what they can offload. So just understand that this communication process needs to work very carefully with that. Coordinating the inventory of the vehicles, the fuel, and the tank locations on the vessel. Like, where are the fuel supplies on the vessel? And then if there's any vehicles on them, what kind of fuel might there be? Or in the case of electric vehicles, lithium-ion batteries. And each of these things is going to be important because they do separate now the lithium ion batteries away from the combustion engines. You want to assess the status of the existing vessel systems like the electrical and propulsion, because if you need to pull, as we did in California, you need to pull the vessel away from the pier and bring it out to be moored out at in the channel or maybe out at sea to get it away from the community because of the smoke or maybe the hazardous chemical materials that are on board the vessel may pose a hazard to the community. Those kinds of situations where if you don't have propulsion, you're going to have to use tugboats, and if you do have propulsion, the tugboats are still going to have to guide this vessel out into the channel and then out to the area where it can be moored. You need to request a unified command to coordinate with U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the vessel agent for the foreign crew management. Now, a lot of times the U.S. Customs and Border Protection are very, let's say, accommodating, so that if you need to take a crew member to the hospital, they're like, don't wait for us. Go ahead, take them there. Tell us where they are, and then we'll meet you at the hospital. But they want to know where the crew is so that they can have accountability there. You want to initiate a complete structural assessment, including the essential engineering calculations. And I don't know whether or not any of the firefighters have naval architect capabilities, but that's who's going to do this. So they're going to be able to tell you, what you can do in terms of the amount of water that you can use on the vessel, and in case of shifting the containers, in the case where the containers have broken their lashings, which ones have to come off first and then it has to be a balanced effect so that you don't have a situation get worse because of the mitigation strategies you're employing. You want to initiate contact with the vessel, salvage, maritime, marine firefighters. You're providing as a term as determined by the vessel response plan. If you know that TNT or Resolve or Don John Smith is coming to the scene, you want to have contact information for them so that you can call them and let them know, where you are in the mitigation strategies. If it's only on the vessel and only the crew are managing that, all right, where's the command center? Where's the staging area? Where can they move equipment? Do you have your international shore connections set up to provide water to the vessel in case the power or propulsion systems fail? The initiating any environmental protection strategies based on the cargo and the vessel location. So, in the case of containers that may be pouring hazardous chemicals out into the air, the Department of Environmental Protection is going to be there, and they're going to be advising you of what you're going to need to do to contain that. In terms of the ability of the vessel to do that, however, will be determined by how the qualified individual can get those resources to that terminal, to that vessel, and contain it with the resources that they have. And then assessing the impact of burning or anchored vessels in the maritime transportation system. You're also looking to see how close that ship is to another ship, and could that perimeter be compromised by those flames, or perhaps the other vessel has chemicals on it that may be affected by this particular incident. So let's move on to section 4, where it's pretty much only 3 sections, and it's real easy to consider all of these issues. One is the vessel stability, which we've talked throughout this process. Is always an issue when salvage maritime firefighters are providing, and they have naval architects on staff. Those are the people that tell you, is the ship stable, how you can stabilize it. You don't want to create a situation where you came in and the ship was stable and the mitigation factors caused a problem, caused an instability, and now the ship may be capsizing or may become unstable. The stability margins for a ship with firefighting water differ, and it depends on the construction and the type of the ship. If you're doing perimeter cooling, may not be a big deal, but if you're talking about a ship that may only be about 200 or 180 meters, roughly about 300 to 400 feet, that ship is going to tip a lot faster than a ship that may be 1,000 feet. Your naval architects will be able to help you in that area. The specialists in these areas have said this to us so many times over the years we've been doing this. Brian, Peter, please just tell them to box it up. Close all the doors, all the hatchways, close up the gangways, bring the ramps up, activate your CO2 system, have the land-based first responders on the outside cooling the perimeter areas, like the containers that might have chemicals on them, or the where the engine room is, or where the fuel supply is, things along those lines, so that it doesn't get worse. One of the salvage maritime firefighters was telling us, look for peeling, the paint peeling on an area of the vessel. So have somebody inspecting either the land side or the water side, and identify if they see any peeling. That's where you need to start cooling, because of course that's where the heat of that the inside of the vessel is causing that problem. Cool it down and then just wait. If the ship has activated its CO2 system, some ships were telling us that they wait 48 hours before they will open any door, and first responders don't like waiting that long. I want to see what's going on inside there, and wind up opening a door and creating the problem all over again. Uh, there's several investigations going on where land-based first responders took action where it could have been um, hazardous to the crew members, hazardous to the first responders that were on the deck because they weren't sure what they were doing. They were just curious about, is it out or isn't it out? And let air into the system. Of course, the pressure behind that in that particular area where the fire is just waiting for some oxygen so it can reactivate. Okay, wait to figure out what those safety margins are on the vessel. Ask the captain. They've already pre-identified how they're going to deal with it. As I said, some ships it's 48 hours, some ships it's 72 hours, especially when they're transporting lithium-ion batteries or lithium-ion vehicles. They may wait a little bit longer. And if any firefighter who's ever had to deal with a lithium-ion battery fire knows that you can put thousands of gallons of water on this thing to try and cool it, and you put it back. You put the car up on a flatbed tow truck, and you get it to the yard, and 2 days later it starts firing. It starts catching fire again. So the thermal runaway is a constant problem especially with ro-ro vessels. If you like this video, you like the presentation today, go to the bottom link there, put the thumbs up, and if you'd like to leave us any comments, we'd greatly appreciate that. We're always looking for new content to put out there. We're doing this 20 years now, bringing first responders into the maritime community to make them aware of it. And of course, there's so few incidents that happen that it could be a generation or maybe 2 generations of firefighters before the next one is seen. So, but these videos will kind of give you an industrial knowledge of what to do, and you can always revisit them whatever you like. Again, this is Brian O'Neill. Thank you very much for your time, and be safe out there.